Well, we are actually going to be making a peach crisp with the oat and pecan streusel topping. So that's what's on the menu, and then we're going to play with some fun variations of that dish, of the same recipe that was provided for you guys, to show you just a kind of a couple other fun ways that you can just change the presentation up. You know, whether you want to just serve it simple as it is, straightforward, or I'm also going to give you a shot of how I would do it here inside the restaurant for a plate of dessert as well. If you're ever having a little dinner party and kind of want to jazz it up. So that's what we'll be doing this evening. So I have these lovely peaches that came in from Pearson. I mean, when I tell you, when the UPS guy dropped them off at the front porch, and I mean, I think the whole yard just lit up with the smell. It was just a beautiful aroma. You can really take the time to see how well they care for the packaging of it. I'm going to lift this box here just so you can see. You know, but everyone comes with this nice, well, first of all, these really cool cards. And they got nice little pointers on how to can things, how to slice the peaches. So a really great information card, of course. All of their lovely ways of being able to contact them and find them on the web. Thought that was really thoughtful to kind of see. But you also get these wonderful, I guess I'm going to call it not styrofoam, but it's like the nice soft kind of, what material do we call this, Mr. Andy? I'm not sure. Like spongy, right? That's the best word for it. Foam, there we go, foam. And so everyone is created in its own little nest, as you can see too, inside here. Of course, I've taken some out, and I've used ate a good bit of them. This box was full when I first got it, but it just was so well packaged. Everything was together. They weren't bruised. It wasn't smushed, and so you can definitely see the care and the quality that went into those. The other items that we have here are a couple of basically what we're using tonight, which we have the pecan meal. Show you kind of how you can really add that pecan flavor inside that crisp topping that we're going to be making. And this is one of the products here that came inside the box, as well as we're going to be using a chopped pecan just for some added texture and crunch. But they also sent me mammoths, some halves. The seasoned pecans are my favorite. I've been snacking on those all night, so I didn't bring those because they didn't last long. So yeah, so those are the ingredients that we're going to be working with tonight from the Pearson Family Farm. I do want to say thank you so much for what they sent for us to be able to do this demo today. And like I said, it's been all wonderfully packaged, and it's been a pleasure to work with them thus far. Sounds good. So, well, the first thing we're going to start doing is we're going to start with doing a technique that's called blanching, right, to help us to peel the peaches. This is just something that I've learned kind of over my years in the culinary world in order to do. And basically what it is, we've got a pot of boiling water that's happening over here. And so we're going to make a nice little X on the bottom of the peaches. We're going to drop those in. And then for maybe just like a minute or so, just enough to kind of get the skins loosened up. Then we're going to shock it in some ice water. And then we'll get peeling from there, and that's where we're going to get started. So first I'm going to introduce you right quick to my assistant for the day. Her name is Megan. So you're going to see her coming in and out of frame, and she's going to help me out with some things. So Megan, if you wouldn't mind giving me some ice water for that, and I will start the process here. So what you want to do is you want to kind of get your peach here, right? You want to make just a small X towards the bottom. And you're also going to find out later too, the way I like to actually slice the peaches, what I find is helpful. That X will come in handy a little bit later as well too. So just want to kind of start with those. And we're going to be using about 6 or so peaches for this dish tonight. So I'm going to start with 6 of these and get them going. And then from there we'll be able to kind of jump in. Yeah, there's a lot of people. Man, you know I love a good festival. We didn't have a peach festival where I grew up at. We did the orange festival at home, but I can only imagine all of the peach pies and peach cobblers and the crisps that are probably floating around. That's got to be some good eating for the day. Yes. See, personally, preferably, I actually like to cook with the skins on because I like the extra color that it gives to the actual dish itself. So you'll notice on one of the variations that we're going to look at this evening, I'm going to show you one that has the peach skin still baked on in the fruit. Because personally, you know, I like the flavor to the texture contrast that it gives. So it's not something that I always do. It's just there are a bunch of people out there in the world who believe that all fruit should be peeled, and so I want to cover that base just in case someone wanted, you know, kind of like a nice little neat technique of kind of how to peel the peaches. Correct, so now I'm putting them inside the ice bath I was talking about earlier. I'm going to show you that here in just a second, and I'll give you a little stuff. You can already see too where it's actually starting to peel. The skin itself is coming on off. You can see it kind of just almost just pulling away. And so when we put it inside this ice bath, stop the cooking process, so that way they don't continue to cook on us, because of course they're going to cook as we put them in the oven later on to bake off our crisps. So this is just a simple, quick technique just to kind of help with the peeling. Stuff those all in. No. If you won't peel them, then there's no need to actually blanch them and go through the process. You can just go straight into slicing them up in quarter. All right. So from this point here, we should be able to just peel that skin right on down. Look how just easy that comes off. And so that makes everything a lot better there. Look at the color on that too, huh? It's such a beautiful color too. It starts to come out and show. Yes, I do. This one here is the corn red. I'm probably butchering the name of that, but it's spelled. I'll just show you. C-A-R-O, I believe that's another R-E-D, maybe? Carrot, there we go. There we go. That's that public education for you right there, you know? Well, I can tell you what, they definitely did it right then, because when I tell you every one of those cases were in beautiful condition, and like I said, they all have been beautifully ripe. So just ready to go. So somebody knew what they were doing down there, that's for sure. All right, so the way I like to kind of, because sometimes every now and then you'll have a little trouble with the stone, you know, the core, the seed in the center, right? So I like to use those X's and then kind of come around and try and feel for that seed there, and just kind of bring my knife on around, and then go the other side too, so you end up with 4/4, right? And so what that allows me to be able to do is then kind of get in there without bruising up too much of the outside, but start here and you can kind of feel for that fruit. And then run your finger right along the edge, and that way you can hopefully get a nicer, you know, wedge, if it doesn't just come directly off the pit. I also tend to either keep a bowl nearby, or like my cutting board here has these grooves that help to keep any juice that I have. That way if I want to dump some of that back inside of my mix later, I haven't lost all that good juice that's come out. No sir, not at all. You know, normally your chin catches it when you just bite in, right? So I'm using the board as my chin. So, with any type of jam, for the most part, the riper the better, right? Because all of those sugars have done what they're supposed to do inside the fruit, and you know, and it's going to just give for a much sweeter and a more prominent flavor. So the riper the better. As for the variety, I'm going to refer that to maybe somebody with Pearson Farm to kind of figure out, because I'm learning a little bit more today about the different varieties than I have in the past. But as for the actual fruit itself, as long as it's nice and ripe, those make for the best jam. Okay. Gotcha. Beautiful. There we go. See, we all learned a little something today. Well, welcome everybody. It's good to have you guys out today. I appreciate you tuning in. Just a good twist, and it would come right on through. Yep. Slice and twist. Yeah, and and that's what's been so amazing about these peaches so far. Because how sometimes you'll just kind of go to, to your local supermarket, not quite sure where those fruit come in. You'll get some that have some juice, some will be firm and hard. It's always such a different. When I tell you, every peach inside of every one of these boxes is like, clear, like they've been hand picked. You know what I mean? Hand picked and hand selected. It's just been amazing. Yeah, you did say that. I'm not quite sure if I believe you, but that was dead on. Dead on. All right. All right. So I'm going to wipe my hands here. And then if you wouldn't mind just dumping the water out of this. And then I'm going to hang it. And I'm going to toss everything inside. Thank you. All right. So now that we've got those all off the pit, I come through. I like kind of, a meatier texture, right? So I'm not going to cut these into smaller pieces. Of course, you can feel free to do that if you would like. But I'm going to literally just cut these pieces right there just in half one more time. So we get just a nice kind of chunk. Because as they cook up and they release some more of the liquid, they will kind of tighten just a little bit. So this way to still give you a nice, good peach feel, a good bite is what I'm trying to get at, right? A good bite whenever you kind of get into it later on in the process. So let's just do that. Thank you so much. That is a great question, and it's hard for me to answer that because cups is a volume thing. So these peaches here, or like I think they're a nice size, right? They're kind of almost the size of a baseball. So for instance, if you put this inside of a cup, this probably would fill a cup right here, right? But sometimes, you depending on, what you got, they may be a little smaller, so that could mean more volume. So it's really kind of hard to judge on that. That's why I kind of put that number of 6 to 8. That way you kind of get a good feel. And basically what you're looking for is that it's going to fill the pan that you're getting ready to, to mix in. Store what up or down? I didn't understand. I don't keep mine in the fridge at all. I typically kind of buy what I need to use, so I'm normally trying to find them as ripe as possible or a little bit underripe and then let them sit out to ripe. So I'm not really sure whether it matters from the top or the bottom, but I put it to you this way: the colder it is, right, the less they will ripen, right, or the less quickly they will ripen. So if for some reason the bottom of your fridge or the back of your fridge is cooler than your front or your top, and you're trying to slow down that process a little bit more, I will go wherever it's colder. did I know that? Getting everybody off to school in the morning. Mom used to hate whenever I missed the bus. All right, so now we have all of our sliced peaches here. We're gonna go ahead on and mix the rest of the filling, and we'll set that aside. That way we can work on the streusel topping from there, okay? So, just to save us time, and I'm not trying to dig into a bunch of different things, whatever, right? I have most of our ingredients here already kind of ready to go for us. So, with that being said, yes, would you hand me those, please? Thank you so much. I got it. Thank you. All right. So, inside of here, I have my brown sugar already, white sugar, and then my 2 tablespoons of flour. If for some reason you prefer not to use flour, you can use cornstarch, which will give you, it's kind of hard to say gluten-free because you're going to have to use flour for the crust part. But if you want to just have less flour for whatever reason, or you don't have it available, you can also replace it with cornstarch. That would do the same, and just use it as a thickening agent. I just have some all-purpose flour that's in here. Everything already measured out for me. I'm going to just kind of just dump this all together over it. All right. Got some vanilla extract. I know the recipe calls for a tablespoon. I have never measured vanilla extract a day in my life, so I say just squeeze until you feel content. That's kind of the rule on that. And then last but not least here, I have a little bit of salt. Salt is a flavor enhancer, right? It helps to bring out that flavor. We don't want to put too much in. And I will give you a tip. I learned this out the hard way whenever I was actually going through my demo to make sure that everything kind of lined up for this. At home, I had some table salt, which is here, right? And typically whenever I'm at work, I use ground coarse kosher salt. Those make a difference with that amount. So if you're using coarse ground kosher salt, then the half a teaspoon amount that's on there is a perfect amount. If you're using table salt though, I would actually cut that in half because you get more salt granules inside that teaspoon, which then tends to lead to a more salty product. So for this case, I'm going to just sprinkle about a little bit of half of that over, just a little bit. Keep the rest of it to the side. And just as always, just gonna use your hands or your spoon if you prefer. I'm kind of a hand guy. Just want to just kind of toss that on up and just let it kind of mellow. And then that flour and stuff will get in there with those juices that you had left from the peaches and kind of start to make its own little syrup down there. And we just let them kind of sit and start to kind of soak up those flavors. All right. Yeah, I wish I had this much space in my kitchen. That would be amazing. Alrighty, now we're going to move on to the topping that goes above. It's basically just a streusel that we're making, right? Which is going to consist of, some butter and some sugars, and then of course we have the flour, and then we have our add-ins that we're going to add as well to kind of flavor enhance, as we like to call it, as well as texture enhance. So, thank you so much. All right, let me just get some of that sugar off my fingers because it was feeling a little sticky. All right. So you kind of want this to be lumpy, right? You know what I mean? And kind of crumbly. So now, look, you're more than welcome to use your mixing bowl or your KitchenAid at home if you have one. And that's honestly what I do whenever I'm either at work or I'm at home. But it also can be done simply with just a spoon because you're just trying to really just bring everything together. So we're going to start in with this butter. Then I have my sugars and stuff already measured out. I'm going to dump those over. I'm going to take my spatula here and I'm just going to kind of mash them together. Of course, you're going to go with soft butter, almost like if you were making a cookie. And we're basically just trying to mix this butter and sugar together until, you know, there's not necessarily any straight butter lumps left unattended. So that's pretty much what we're looking for, right? Just like that. All right. So we kind of just break that up a little bit. And now I'm going to come in with our flour next, because we want to kind of get that mixed up and going, and then we'll come in finally with the add-ons and then the flavorings, right? So add in our flour. And I'm going to switch over, put my gloves on for this part here, because eventually I'm getting here with my hands to kind of crumble things up and make it all nice and crumbly. And unfortunately, the butter would just stick to my fingers and it would just cause more of a mess than it works. So I'll put some gloves on for this step. I like spatulas because they're flexible, right? So they can flex with me if I want to bend, if I want to smash, you know, they tend to have a little bit more give. The more thinner edge too, if I'm cutting through, right? Won't just toss more flour kind of all over the place. So I am a spatula fan for this, but once again, you know, whatever you feel comfortable with, that's what's really important when it comes down to cooking is your comfort level. If you're not used to using a tool, then you'll probably just end up making more mess than before. So if you're comfortable with a spoon, go with one, but my preference is definitely a spatula. Yeah. So it's kind of almost, you can see kind of too how you got pieces of that butter, fat, sugar, you know, kind of, then the flour just kind of crumbled there. So it's kind of starting to get together where I want it, right? So at this point, I'm going to come in now with my add-ins. So in here we have, you can see we got some of that pecan meal here to the side, and that's really going to give that pecan flavor all throughout this dough. And then you got some oats just for some different textures, as well as the chopped pecans just for a crunch, right? Because everything else will tend to be soft, and so this is going to help to also kind of provide a crunch. Normally, I like to always toast my pecans before using them in a dish, but for this item, I don't. And I'll tell you why. Is because you're going to cook this bakes for such a long time at a certain temperature that they're going to tend to toast themselves as they're in. If you toast them before, you can have a chance of over toasting them, and then you can kind of get close to more burnt taste. So I like to just kind of mix this in, let this cook with that fat, and then let all of those natural oils from the pecan actually pull that flavor into the actual crisp itself while it's baking. So I don't toast them before doing them for a crisp. So we're going to just dump everything in. And at this point, I am going to get all of that extra butter off of that spatula there. All right. That we are. So, as you guys can see here, number. Oh, sorry, go ahead. All right, so now we have the streusel topping, right? So it's nice and crumbly, right? We got some bigger chunks pieces in there as well, but that's what we're looking for, right? Just something that we can now sprinkle over, and and kind of fill in all that. So as the crisps bake, the juices will kind of mix in with this, as well as that butter and the sugar will kind of caramelize out, and you're just gonna get some nice yummy goodness, hopefully, right? So at this point, we have all of our components, right? And now we're basically just kind of ready to prepare it to go into the oven. So from there, pan from me, please. Thank you. So I'm using what we call a half hotel pan, right? There's actual dimensions on a half hotel pan. That's what. You know what top of your head, maybe by chance? Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's close to, it should be close to that 9 by 13 size that I put down on the recipe card for you. I'll have to measure this out one day, because we just always talk about them in a matter of halves or thirds or 6 pans. So the actual measurements on it, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I have my pan here. What I would do now at this point, you can do a couple things. Either I would spray it out with some spray, or take a little bit of soft butter, right, and kind of rub it all around, just to kind of, give it a little something, because as this bubble up and thickens, just for kind of scooping out, it'll just save you a little bit of hassle later on for cleanup. So that's what I would normally do for you there, but we already got one prepared, so this one is just kind of for straight say. So at this point, we're really just dump that right on in, and you want all that liquid to get right in there with it. That's it, because that's what's going to make your nice little kind of, that nice little kind of, juicy, creamy part there. And I just try and kind of flatten them out in the sense of even out, right? If we had a clump here, things on the edges will cook quicker, stuff in the middle wouldn't cook as fast, your time frame's off. So you kind of want to just even them all out as best as you can. So we did that. And at this point, you're just going to kind of take that crumble, right, and you're going to just kind of sprinkle right on over. And don't be afraid to, it may feel like you're being a little heavy-handed with it, right? You will have a little of this crumble left over. I always think it makes good for a garnish. You can always just toast it on its own in a pan for in a sheet tray in your oven. And my convection oven takes about 10 minutes, but we stir them kind of every 2 or 3 minutes so that one side doesn't brown for the other. But then it makes for good garnishes for muffins, if you have muffins that you like, or it'll make for, in my case, plate desserts. We use them as places to hold ice cream whenever we put ice cream on a plate for certain things. So it can kind of come in handy for all sorts of things from there. But you definitely want to put enough, because remember you have all that juice that's in there, and those pieces will give off a little bit more. So put a little bit more than what you think you should, just so you have some place for that to catch on to, so you don't end up too soupy. That crisp will kind of help to cover that. So inside the kitchen here, we typically have these metal pans that we cook in. But at home, I bake mine in a glass dish. A metal pan will cook, it will, not necessarily say cook faster, but it will cause more coloration, right? Or more, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with an M. Basically, long story short, the metal will heat up, right, and it will kind of, it's gonna be darker. So if you ever notice when you cook biscuits, for instance, you cook biscuits in a glass pan, they'll still be kind of a little bit whiter, right, towards the bottom of it, versus like if in a metal pan, you'll get that nice kind of sear. It helps to kind of, you know, really cause that caramelization process to happen a little better. So for this matter, I don't really have a preference because those fruits aren't really going to caramelize to that point where you're going to see a color difference on the bottom. So a metal pan versus a glass pan does not make a difference for this preparation. But however, if I was cooking something like biscuits, you know, or something along those lines, or if I was doing an actual, even like a cobbler, right? And I could typically do like a cake topping for the cobbler. You want that nice, pretty golden brown color. Just kind of like Andy would say, the cast iron skillet or something that's got a metal will give you a better, you know, a better product at the end of the day for that. But for this dish here, it doesn't really matter much because it's just the fruit that's on the bottom and it's not really touching anything. And this is so crumbly on top that the natural heat just still causes the brown in nice areas for you as you want it to. There we go, 12 by 10. Perfect, thank you, Janet, I appreciate that. I would assume so because they sell like those plant butters. You know, like Country Crock has a plant butter base, and I think for the most part you can kind of substitute those, you know, in and out equally. It may cause you a little bit of an issue with the browning effect, right? That's maybe where you might kind of cause a problem, but as for the actual texture and the integrity of it, that should still work. All right, so this here is now actually, you know, where it needs to be. So at this point here, you know, I would put it in the oven. I wouldn't cover it. I would put it straight in because you really want, like I said, you want to try and get some browning to happen a little bit on top here, and for those, you know, that crust, that streusel topping to really kind of, you know, kind of start to clump together a little bit and get some color to it. So uncovered, put it into the oven. You know, bake it 35 to 45 minutes, or like what I can say is until done. My oven may possibly cook a little bit faster than yours. It may be hotter. So just one thing, you just kind of want to check it. What you'll start to see is kind of like with a pie, like you'll start to see the bubbly action happening on the side. The juices are kind of bubbling up, and then as long as you got the color that you want on the top of it, then you can pull it. Some you like a lighter crust. Some of you want to go a little bit longer and darker. That's completely up to your preference. But around 35 to 45 minutes in about 350-degree oven, that should do the job. That's exactly right. It's through the magic of TV. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see how that liquid started to kind of bubble up here on the side. That's how I knew it was about done. I got some nice golden, like a little golden brown color here. My pecans here, those clusters, they look a little toasted. And so that's kind of where I like it at. So that's why I pull it. But that's basically what you'll be looking for here when it's all said and done. And this is where that glass dish comes. So if you're going to just serve this whole in like a family style setting, I think a nice pretty glass casserole dish would be pretty because you'll be able to see all those beautiful colors and those peaches lined up, and it'd be a great serving piece to present. You know, but if you're going to serve it out to your guests, I'll give you through a quick little way where you can kind of serve this up, and you know, just kind of make it nice inside the bowl. So I'm going to give myself, you know, a little good helping here because, you know, we're not driving tonight, right? Place that right down in there. You can see too a little bit there, some of the peaches there from the side here and the juice and stuff, and you know, of course, and I actually prefer this warm myself. I like it nice and hot, almost out of maybe let it rest for about 15 minutes just so it won't burn your tongue. I like to serve mine nice and warm normally, but because of TV purposes, I had this one early prepared. It's a little bit chilled. We're going to pretend it's nice and hot and fully at the moment. So then from there, I would serve this with just a little bit of vanilla ice cream. I did make this ice cream. And give it a little whipped cream too, right? And there we go. So I thought it would be fun to also just show you some different things that we can do with that same recipe being prepared the same way. But it's also fun is if you want to kind of take it off for a picnic or something, it also works out beautifully as a pie. Now, if you noticed earlier on that one I just prepared, I had peeled the peaches, and so it's kind of that golden yellow color, which is beautiful. In this pie here, I actually left the peach skins on, and so I don't know if you can tell, I'm gonna cut you a piece here in just a second, but you can also then see kind of like that more peachy and pink color that I think is just really, really pretty, and so that's why I prefer to leave the skins on personally. Yeah, so the pecans, you can definitely add more, or if you would, what you could do too is you could always make your own pecan meal in essence, right? You could take some of those pecans you have and you can chop them down and then pass them through like your food processor at home. Just be careful to not do it too far because there's so much natural oils inside of pecans that you'll end up with almost like a pecan butter versus the actual meal. But that's an option. But you can always add more of those chopped pecans in it directly if you would like. That was just kind of a, you know, what I kind of felt like a nice good blend balance to give you the texture and as well as the flavor. But you can always, those add-ins are not really so much dependent on the chemistry of the recipe. So for instance, I think the recipe called for a quarter cup of chopped pecans. You could honestly up that to probably as far as 3/4 of a cup without it making a difference into the mix you have. All right, so you know, if it is a good pie, right, it really should kind of do it for you. I always just try and cut down the center myself, right, to give myself a focal point. If I was going to try and cut it all at the moment, I would then do another half, and then I would go half and then half, right? Until we get about 8 portions from this size. This is about a 9-inch pie pan. You know, so, you know, but if you let it set properly, and hopefully we'll see here, when I cooked it, let it set up enough, cooked enough, the sugar and that syrup should have thickened itself naturally, so that hopefully whenever I go ready to slice this out, you know, it should come out and you should see a nice piece here. But I will say this, even as professionals do it, we always basically think about the first piece being a sacrifice, right? That first piece just never ever seems to ever want to come out just right. But, you know, sometimes you get lucky, so we're going to see if we do today. That's it. Yeah, it's not a little more things. So that's what you get there. So I'll turn this around here too, so you can get a good shot on the inside as well. What that looks like. And this was literally the same recipe. There was no alterations. Of course, you have to get yourself a pie shell. I like to make my pie shells from scratch. So this is my recipe for the pie shell here, but you can always use a store-bought pie shell if that's easier for you. But you will prepare everything the same. Have your fruit that makes your streusel top. Dump your fruit in. And I did not par bake the pie shell either, so it all baked the same time for about the same amount of time. So about somewhere around between 45, and then this one may have went actually about 10 minutes longer to about 55 minutes. Just sit that back in there. Absolutely. So, if you're gonna do fried pies with it, right? So have your dough prepared. You want to make sure that that dough is nice and chilled, right? So you can roll it out and it's gonna hold that structure. And this will be the one time that I would say that you don't want to have so much liquid left over, right? So I wouldn't have poured the juices in that was left over from that peach, whatever. And I may have would have upped for that recipe there. I may have would have upped the flour maybe another tablespoon, just because you want it to be a little bit thick, because of course if it's too loose, when it goes to fry, it's going to just run out. Now, if you're going to deep fry that pie, right, then you want to freeze that dough before you go to fry it, because something about it dropping all the way down in the heat and the rapidness, it tends to want to explode. So if the pie is frozen itself, it will cook the crust on the outside, it will nicely warm your filling. And I'm sorry, one more thing, so you actually want to cook that filling before you actually put it inside the pie shell. So take that same recipe, I would then toss onto the stove on about a mid to low heat, just so that flour thickens it up, and then you can kind of take and you're going to put that filling in. But you want to cook it beforehand, because you're really only going to fry the outside shell. The filling should be already done in that case. Now, if you're going to do it the old-fashioned way and fry it inside of a cast-iron skillet, it does not have to be frozen, because the bottom of the pan will keep it from exploding on you. But that's really, you can take that same recipe, just cook it on the stove first till it's nice and thick and it's already cooked through, and then you can apply that inside of your pie crust, crimp it up the way you would like, and you can deep fry it. So I think I'm about 6 hours from the coast, I think, right, Andy? All right. Now we're going to do one more variation. This is kind of what I would do in the case of this being a plated dessert. So I'm going to come with a couple of these items here that I've done. And there's a couple of extra things, and some things I have done a little differently, so I'll show you. So for the streusel, I took that streusel, I put some in a bowl and almost treated it like a graham crust. I added a little bit of melted butter to it, and I packed it inside of a ring mold, and I got these discs from it, but it almost look like nice little pecan sandies. They're not quite the same, but you know, almost similar to that. And so I have that. This is me too. So I did cook some of the filling in the sauce, and I cooked it with a little butter. as well too. So it's the same measurements, but I added a little butter in the pot, cooked down, let it thicken up a little bit, and so that way you kind of get this creaminess, like almost a sauce. All right, and then I got a couple things in. This whole little cream in here. Put some back inside of the quart container at this moment, and the system of that can actually come out from it. Okay. All right. Cool. So from here, I would start with a little bit of the sauce here. And I'm going to just kind of take some, just kind of drag it around. Just kind of create a visual of where I want to go with it. I like abstract things, so we'll just kind of let that naturally go up there. Alright. We then kind of come here towards the end. And this is where I'm going to get a little bit more heavier with that filling. So then from there, I took and I made an almond twill, right? And I'm actually going to, I'm happy that we got this pecan meal, because I'm actually going to go back and try to actually see if I can get the same recipe to work with the pecan meal instead, which I think will be really cool because I give a different flavor profile. And I'm going to then just kind of sit that right there in that spot. Take this whipped cream that we made, we'll dollop that right on top. And then once again, this cream stick here. That's it. All made from the same ingredients there. You're very, very welcome.